What is that thing that told you that it is worth doing it?
People don't just want to save time; they also want to make more money.
Like, what is the thing about startups that kind of excites some people?
Privilege of failure.
Yeah, how did you come across this problem?
My co-founder became an EMT to be on the field.
Why did you need entrepreneurship?
That is such a good question. Like the why.
Let's get started. Something that is not there on a resume or something that is not there on LinkedIn. Who is honest?
I like to like when you're growing up, people ask you what you want to be. I didn't grow up saying I want to be in healthcare administration or software, but as I've grown up, I've kind of realized it's kind of my ikigai, which is like something I'm good at, something I want to do. I think there's one more circle to the Venn diagram, but it's right in the middle of things I want to do and things I'm good at. Um, I, I I guess it's out of character for me to like healthcare administration because I, come from um, theoretical background in computer science, and I was a lot into creative and endeavors such as music and art and things of that nature. But over time, I found out that healthcare administration is kind of its own art and its own science. So I've kind of been obsessed with it, and here I am. Yeah, that's I guess not really something that I can show on my LinkedIn. It was fairly
Yep. And
inconsequential.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then I want to talk about like the first company that you worked in the US, and I want to talk about how was it different culturally or structurally? Was it something that you were already prepared that this is how it's going to be, or was it different in the way they kind of operate in India and in the US?
Um, so while I was at Bangalore is such a amazing city that uh, when I was at Bangalore, I was at a company called Persistence. That was the first company I worked at in India. Not Persistent Systems. That's a different company that a lot of people get confused with. Persistence was a crypto startup back in the day. They're still around, and uh, my Deepanshu, one of my managers there, took a chance on me, gave me an internship, and I worked over there for a while, and then I worked remotely in US companies once I was done with my internship. So I didn't really have a culture shock coming from Bangalore to US. I imagine if I worked in more traditional companies in India, I would have some cultural shocks, but I find that India is keeping up with global HR practices and things of that nature where you don't really feel it. It was intense back in India. It was intense even at my first company in the US, and that intensity kind of kept me going, and it was exactly the kind of environment I enjoyed, and you know, just didn't really have as much of a culture shock as I thought I would.
Okay, so the one in the US was fintech, is it? What was the company? It was
It
fintech.
was
What did they do?
they basically they were in crypto, but more so infrastructure of cryptocurrencies. They weren't in the currency or fintech space. They were building the layer around it. Um, but yeah, they have. I wouldn't say they have pivoted. They've added more products to their line, so they might be doing more things now. I haven't kept in touch over the past few months with them, but yeah.
Correct. Okay, and then you were at is it RISC, we International? Was there an internship during your?
Oh, right, right. So during grad school, during masters, it's risk B. So risk B, it's an unconventional way to say it, but risk B, what they do is, you know how there used to be older computers used to have 8051 as processors, and then there was um, sorry, I'm forgetting. I think x86 Intel x86 processors, and then we had AMD come out with was it AMD? I don't remember, but Apple then came out with M1 chips that were silicon based. So different architectures existed. One of those architectures is RISC-V, which is a reduced instruction set. So it's supposed to be simpler and more robust. Um, and while I was interning over there, it was just like an open source platform that we were building. Um, Paul at Risk, we took took a chance with me, took a risk with me, if I may say so, as a pun. But he took a chance with me, and he gave me an internship to do. And I met some excellent engineers there while I was working with him over there. and learned a lot about computer architecture fundamentally. This was still when I wanted to do a PhD, so it was transformational
So
in
you were
speed.
into research during that time. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Okay. And then I see that after that you worked on three startups. Was it all the three startups, or was it how big of a company was it on all the three ones?
Yeah, so Commure is a huge company. They work in traditional medical field, and um, they do like they build tools and suites for traditional medical companies. Um, that was a huge company. They have like 700 employees. They are valued in billions, and they just raised a double-digit million round as well. So they were a huge company, and I worked there for a while, and it was a lot of fun. Just the company is young. Uh, they move quick, so it was a lot of fun working there.
I want to kind of ask, like, what is the thing about startups that kind of excites some people? I'll tell you something that excites me to work in a startup is that there is actually no structure in the company in terms of like there is a flat scaled hierarchy, and then everybody is just trying to figure out whether it's a product market fit or whatever it might be, right, in different sectors within the same thing. But the best part about it is that you have the privilege of failure. Like you can do something and then you fail in it, and then it's okay to it's okay, and it's you're not going to be blamed on it. And I think that privilege itself kind of gives merit towards creativity, right? You can maybe try different things, and then you can pitch on different items, and so stuff like that. But this is something that for me personally, is that I love working with startup. What is it for you? Like what is it for all us?
It is such a that is such a good reason. Like the privilege of failure. That is such a um, you know uh, so potent. I think it's similar. When I started Commure was is hierarchical, sure, but there's a lot of freedom on the teams as well. I've had great managers there. I've had great teammates there. I think one of the things that was sort of intoxicating about this was the speed of it all, and the peers around you, right? Um all the peers have the same determination to like there's no finish line in sight. You sometimes people just run for the sake of running, and it's so much fun, run with them. Like, and there's obviously the thing you said about you can fail, and you're not punished for it. You're usually punished for not being thorough or doing a bad job generally. But even then, it's usually just your manager calling you and asking you, "Hey, man, why did you do that?" And it's an honest conversation. There's no pretense about it. It's pretty straightforward. I love that. So yeah.
So let's start from there is an amount of friction threshold that tells you that I'm going to start this, and it is also not only part about starting it, and then there is amount of consequence that comes with doing anything. There is an amount of risk and consequence that comes with it. And entrepreneurship, I think, is you carry it until you either exit the company or you close shop. It's one of those two. Until
Yeah.
then, you just carry the risk and this thing. And then I don't think there may be high and low, but the risk factor is pretty kind of standard across the board. So, what is that thing that told you that it is worth doing it? What is it about? What was it about a problem that you wanted to solve, or was it at the other way around that you wanted to start up, and then you kind of found the problem? Like, what is it about Ambra that kind of what is the story about Ambra?
Wow. Yeah, it's long. It feels longer than it needs to be. So while I was still, between my first startup and my second startup, the ones I was working at, right in the middle somewhere, I was enamored with the idea of doing a startup. I didn't know what I want to do yet, but at this point, I had read Thousand Naked Strangers, and I was excited about the idea of getting into a startup. Sometime later, I was a solopreneur when I started. Sometime later, I stepped into this idea of building a scribe for paramedics, and we used to be called parascribe back in the day. And I thought that's such
Okay.
a thing for
What
me.
was it again? Sorry, Parastripe, is it?
Parascribe. So a scribe is essentially, yeah, a scribe is like it's like an AI ambient listening tool that will generate reports, and like we my thing was like I am really good at doing healthcare integrations, right? Like with legacy systems, and my value proposition.
Why is that? Why are you good at healthcare?
Yeah, I think at Commure, I was just thrown into so much healthcare integrations, where like my job was like, you get this product integrated with this extremely, old legacy product, and that was a pattern throughout my next two companies as well, where I was at pretty briefly, if I'm being honest, but that was a pattern too. And as I was going through it, I was like, one of the things I can provide is I can build a really good scribe, I can build a really good application, and two, I can do really wide amount of integrations. And somewhere along this line, my co-founder Ayla, who's a certified genius. She's from Brown. She did her undergrad from Brown in mathematics, and then she worked as an investor for a while. We just got talking, and she was working on another excellent startup idea, but they were moving at a speed, like they weren't moving at a speed that she was happy with, I think. And she liked the idea that I was proposing, which was a scribe for paramedics. It's just so sounds so simple. Like why not do it? Um, so she joined in, and she, for about a few months, we tried selling it to different people, and we just found out surprisingly that even though it's such a simple idea to sell, there's a lot of friction. Like in healthcare world, a sales cycle. Are you in the startup world as well?
Yeah, I think maybe I can talk a little bit in terms of what you're talking about. There's a lot of compliance and governance and the way you kind of operate, and then the frequency and timeline in which it takes for you to reach somebody, them to get approved, them to look at it, and then there's a lot of even friction in terms of for them to migrate from one system to another, and there's a lot of compliance, HIPAA, and there's like multiple stuff that is there on healthcare. I really want to talk a lot about this one, but please go ahead, Nisha.
Yeah, I think why we pivoted from building scribes to getting into revenue cycle management is uh, was eye opening for me. So when we started building the scribe, right, like we were ready to do integrations, we were ready to do all of these things, and it's a really difficult app to build, in some sense, and maintain. More importantly, because think about it, if you're on an ambulance rig and you're recording with your phone, and you cannot store the audio locally because your local memory is going to go, it can get corrupted, so you have to keep pushing to the cloud, but you're pushing to the cloud, and the ambulance goes into a tunnel where they lose signal. Now suddenly, like you cannot keep pushing it there either, right? So it was a complicated,
What are you pushing? What are you pushing again? Sorry.
the audio, streaming it, the audio, like how we're talking, just streaming the audio, right? So it was really hard to maintain as a product, but we got around to building it fully and like in a very reliable way. But as we started thinking about selling, like we got a lot of interest from groups, but they just weren't progressing, right? And as we started looking into our funding rounds, and we started having talks with investors and positioning ourselves better, um, some of the conversations my co-founder and I had were, we are looking to save people time, right? But people don't just want to save time, they also want to make more money. And this problem of making more money is more upstream, and we do want to get back to working with paramedics and EMTs directly, but we also want to make sure that these ambulance agencies, they're doing incredibly important work, and I don't believe they're being paid um, how they should be. There's this idea in the American canon, which is um, ambulance rides cost a lot, but what goes on behind the scene is that these ambulance agencies are eating a lot of this cost, and not, like they're not pushing thousands of dollars worth of debt to people aggressively. And these are run by like small teams, like small humble teams, who are really efficient and really competent. um, it's just that this act of calling an insurance company, being on a hold with them, navigating their IVR systems, or generating the perfect letter that will get accepted, or doing all of these things, like pulling all of these fragmented data sources together, is just a lot of work for one person to do it. Um, so we just thought, you know what? Here is where we can both save time and make them more money by becoming the perfect co-pilot. And so we made that switch, and it just stuck. And now, we have a wait list that we are working with.
Yeah, how do you come across this problem?
Yeah. So as I said, my we started off with a Stripe. My co-founder became an EMT to be on the field, be engineers, and figure out how things actually work, right? And as she became an EMT, um, we just started having more conversations about other problems that the EMS people in EMS might be having. Billing up patients, sending, if you've ever been to a doctor, you'll see they'll send you a letter with a QR code. You log in, like, okay, that platform's one. What else? Scheduling could be another one. What else? Like, it's just inventory. Like, do we have enough, EpiPens in here? Do we have is our EKG up to date? Um, just the EKG itself. Like, there's so many things to build, but all of these things are like really embedded into the organization. Even in revenue cycle, like the billing software these companies use are really embedded into the organization. Like, people learn how to use these softwares. Like, typically in healthcare world, Epic, for example, is the biggest like healthcare player, and to learn how to use Epic, the IT team needs to do an certification
They're
course.
the biggest in the market.
It's
Is it how big is the market? How big is what's
yeah,
the TAM of the market?
yeah. Here, I'd like to make like a distinction between traditional healthcare. Traditional healthcare is a huge, huge space with billions of dollars and like massive hospitals like making a lot of money. Um, and because they just provide more services, right? Like, not just emergency care, but ontology, so many specialties. In EMS, which is emergency medical services, the TAM is smaller, not significantly so to the point where it's you know a market that is non uh, where it's not such a small market where the ROI is small or something of that nature. It's just
Because I kind of want to understand two things here is that because if there is somebody who's trying to get into this space, right? Let us say, for example, what it depends on what is the NPS score, right, of that market segment. If it is high or is it low? Because if the let's say, for example, there's a product in most of healthcare, that's something that I've noticed is that the UI is really bad. The UI is not that great, right? But they kind of focus more in terms of the functionality of how efficient is it, how more in terms of how resilient and stable the product is, rather than how fancy or easy it looks. Although they do have a bad, they kind of complain about it, and then NPS is low. But I've noticed something that they're okay with it as long as the system works, as long as everybody's fine tuned with it and they're okay with it. They're okay with it. So I kind of want to understand how big is the market, how big is the pie, and who are the major players who are there in the market, and then like where do you fit in, and what is something that you kind of want to solve that they're not. That is the angle that I want to come in.
right. Um, let me start by talking about traditional medical field. And I think the number that you put, which was about 21 billion, I think, in billing, is correct. And let me explain what type of players exist. So there's traditional electronic healthcare record systems. In our world, that becomes patient care report systems, which are very similar in what they do. They store the report of the clinical care that was provided either on field or in a clinic. What's next? Billing software. So usually in traditional healthcare, what happens is billing softwares are all bundled together with the electronic health record system. In EMS, this becomes more complicated. Usually, a company will provide both of these modules. Sometimes they'll provide one of the module, and then the agency will buy the other module from another company. It's not that common to do that. Usually, they'll use all the same modules. But there's another part here which makes it complicated, which is dispatch. And dispatch can work at a 911 level. It can work at a hospital calling you to basically calling an Uber for ambulances. And those companies are huge. Vector Care is a huge player in that space. If I had to, Vector Care, Rideshare, um, in the ambulance space specifically, uh, the record system companies would be Traumasoft, would be ESO, would be ImageTrend, um, and even then it's like complicated. Like in ESO, there's multiple types of softwares that they provide. Newer players have First Due, so really just a lot of players around. And one last thing, if I can add, is that there are independent billing companies. So Digitech, EMSMC, all of these are independent billing companies. Now, as our company where we fit in, like as I said, I don't think I can honestly give you an honest assessment of how big our specific plan is. But if I were to position ourselves somewhere in the market, I would say we're not really a competitor to any of the existing players. And I'd be hesitant to position ourselves as such just because,
Competitive in not in terms of revenue but in terms of product. Would you say that because revenue is definitely an outcome of a good product. I agree on that one, and then maybe you have a take a slice of it not only because your product is good, even like how long you've been in the market, right? I think that you kind of, if you're probably there in the market for a longer period of time, you hold a huge slice for a longer period of time. So definitely I'm not talking competition in terms of that, but in terms of solving a problem, right? For example, Google was had a very big share until ChatGPT kind of came in, right? Although in terms of competition, I want to talk about the problem that you're solving. Like, why does what does Ambra solve that others or other companies miss, or are you doing something a little different over there? What is it solving?
yeah, actually, the example that you brought, which is Google and ChatGPT, I think they're directionally correct in that Google did search, but ChatGPT did chat, essentially AI chat, and that is kind of reducing the amount of traffic onto Google search, right? Um, in a similar vein, like bigger players in our industry, like ESO and like Traumasoft, they build these billing softwares that other bigger players such as EMSMC or Dishtech use to help independent ambulance agencies do billing. Where we come in is we just have one focus, at least for now, which is we will look at when an insurance company says we're not going to pay you or we're going to pay you less. We're going to do a deep dive into why they said that. And then we're going to plug into your software, find out from all these different fragmented data sources the reason could be that. And then we talk back to the insurance company for you. Uh, Obviously, after the ambulance company gives their blessing, and we talk back and we either do AI agent phone calls or we send them a letter or we send them a fax with all the correct documentation to get the answer as to either why it was denied and how we can fight it, or we just fight it, like depending on the circumstances. Sometimes the automation needs us to just say, you know what, this was a valid underpayment from the insurance company. We're going to accept it, and we sometimes we just do that. So it's really like breaking the problem down into like smaller and smaller and smaller chunks and then attacking them. But if I have to like give you a term, it's specifically managing denials or underpayments or follow-ups in the world of revenue cycle management. And no, there is no direct competitor to what we do. We just focus specifically on this, and we focus on automating these with AI.
Okay, if you were to like put it in terms of like who is your ideal customer, right? Like who something the somebody who's who would buy the product, and why would they buy the product? Like what is the friction that they're going through?
Yeah, I think that is such a good question. So the way the EMS world is broken up is there are private players. So the city of Frisco might have a local ambulance agency that may be called something like ambulance service, local ambulance service, right? That, let's suppose that's their name, or Frisco Ambulance. They might be contracted by the city of Frisco or the district that Frisco is in to provide services in that district or city, depending on how the local organization is set up. And that's all there is to it. But there are bigger players that might come in and buy out these local companies. And like you might have seen symbols for Royal Ambulance, who's a big player, or GMR or AMR. These are like big consolidating companies that might buy out local private agencies, to work with them to give the right amount of service to customers in the area or patients in the area, right? And as that goes along, like there's there's one more complication, which is like fire departments also have paramedics who are paid by the state directly, and all of these complications is like it was upon us to decide who's the right customer here. Is it fire departments? Is it private agencies? Is it big companies? Is it billing companies? Is it public ambulance agencies? And we landed on, as we are starting, we're pretty early stage. Our focus right now is private ambulance agencies. So these are small to medium-sized agencies that run fairly efficiently as is. It's just that when we come in, we help you automate the process of going after the smallest amount of underpayment or denials, and like that's our only focus as of now. That's our only focus. That's our bread and butter. And we shadow, we learn, and we do it.
Okay. And if we were to like put it in terms of optimization, let's say you're trying to optimize them, right? Is it in terms of revenue? Are they revenue? Are you kind of making the revenue go up for them? Are you kind of improving the way they perform? How are they being optimized specifically?
Yeah, I think I think some of the ways we try to optimize for it for though some of the ways we try to optimize for revenue is one the industry is very fragmented, as I've said before. So you have many data sources, like some insurance companies might send you a fax or send you a letter, etc., etc., and we try to consolidate all of it to increase the speed with which you might respond to someone. The other thing that we do is, as we start automating this process of calling the pair, doing all of these things, there's no dollar amount small enough that we'll ignore it. Like there's no threshold. Like sometimes ambulance agencies will be like, the remaining the underpayment was for underpaid only by $500, so let's let it be. We don't even let that go. Like we'll chase it down to the last dollar, as long as it is a valid, an invalid underpayment or denial. And it's a- as we do these things, like as we onboard a customer, onboard a client, we look at all of their current setups, like who do you call for getting an answer to this denial, who do you mail for this. And as we do all of it, as we learn all of it, just these extremely tedious process of log in here, do this, do that, we just optimize around that, so you save time but you also save some more money on top.
Got it. Got it. Okay. How old is the existing system? Like, for example, when was the last system updated in terms of like the current system, whatever they are having? How old is it? The reason I'm asking this is because does it take so much? Like, I know how long a drug takes in FDA for it to get approved and all of those things. Do you think it kind of applies to any kind of new product or anything to be implemented into a system. Definitely, if a state or government is kind of involved, there's a lot of procedure and complaints that they have to follow, and the companies have to adhere towards it. So, in terms of healthcare, what is a typical launch of a product?
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to sell in healthcare. Like same with you mentioned a great example of drugs, right? Like of medicine generally. Um, FDA approved medicine usually takes longer because you have to wait for FDA approval. Over the counter medicine takes longer for different reasons, because getting customer acquisition, things of that nature. But supplements, for example, are sold online all the time, right? Like through Amazon, through personal websites. It's similar where like it depends on what you're selling. Some products are just easier to build, harder to maintain, and harder to scale. So you have to switch to kind of like a service model. Some are take longer to build because there's just so many. There's something to the effect of 3,500 insurance companies in the US, or that's not right. The word we use is pairs. So an insurance company can have multiple pairs, but they are internally different enough. So there's like 3,500 of them, and then there's like 70 types of like reasons for why there's an underpayment or denial. And like as we look, like you can already see the matrix is like huge, right? Like 3,500 times 60, 70. And as you go through these one by one, uh, like automating them becomes like non-trivial. Like you might need more data sources, things of that nature. So the integration, the sales, all of this can take really, really long. I would say sometimes it can take 6 months, sometimes it can take a year. Like I've definitely seen deals go on for a year. Sometimes bigger companies, depending on their leadership, might move faster or slower. It's very variable. And that's something you have to take into account. If you're building in healthcare, be it ambulances, be it therapy, be it anything, you have to take into consideration that. But yeah.
If you were to think of two slices where they're yet to be disrupted, and why have they not been disrupted?
If I can ask you a question here, yeah, when you say disrupted, do you mean like there's no current new players in it, or just
I'll
that the
give you
new?
an example, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, maybe. So, for example, if you were to do anything in terms of patient portal, it's something that have been there for so long that doctors are being the thing is that whenever you are doing either engineering or any other field, whenever you kind of you learn it, and then when you come into the workplace, there is a gap, right? For example, whatever you have learned and whenever you come and apply it, it's completely different, and the way you work it and where the system works and stuff like that. The thing with healthcare is that whenever a doctor or a nurse is kind of being in school, they are trained with a certain system, right? They kind of figure out how this is done, how that is done, and all of that. And then it becomes a reflex for them at some point where they know the system, they're familiar when they learn it, right? And then when you come, when they come to the workforce, it's pretty much the same. Whatever they've seen here is pretty much going to be the same over here. So because of that habit that is being formed, if you bring in any product that slightly drifts from what is there, there is a lot of friction. There's a lot of friction that doesn't necessarily encourage the new product, even though it might solve or do it better. I think the I know how this works plays a bigger factor than the product itself. Being there. I have a lot of people in healthcare who kind of launch products around the same space, and they're kind of uh, medium-sized big companies who kind of do that. But one thing they've all told me in common is that it takes at least a year or so just to understand what they need, right? Just in terms of even if you have to make a small tweak, there's a lot of training that goes into an existing product that they're using, not a new product. They're already servicing the healthcare industry, and then even the small feature tweak or something it's being done, it kind of has to change because there's a voice calling that is kind of attached to it, the way you have documentation on your website, the way you communicate, it's a cascading effect that has to change everywhere. And usually they don't change it rather than bring about a small change, even though it brings up efficiency. So this is what I want to kind of talk about. Like, is there anything else that is there that has a low net promoter score but is waiting to be disrupted, but for many reasons it is not?
So there is this thing called great examples, but and I'll talk more about patient portal because that is such a good like starting point to talk about. But there's this thing called the Raboy law, Keith Raboy, which
Sorry, what was that?
Keith Raboy. Yeah, he's this. I think he was the founder behind Open Door or something of to that nature, and he had this thing about how to find good startup ideas. And like, it's not it's not Bible, but it was like I found it pretty um, fun to look into when I was reading it. But it essentially says find an industry with a low NPS, high fragmentation, and a field where you can own the whole vertical stack. And like, there's no other field like that except healthcare. Because healthcare end to end, like from the first time you step into, like from the patient perspective, the first time you step into a hospital to step out, even when you're at home, you have your Apple Watch, all of it, like your health revolves around it, right? Like so there's a lot to be owned, but it's important to be disciplined, right? Like someone could start off as a scribing company and then own RCM and then want to do patient care, and they go into the Apple Watch wearable space, right? You can do all of it, but as a startup, I think you have to be very disciplined. So to answer more to your question, like when you say like every like I was on a walk with one of my friends who's also a healthcare founder, and we were talking about ideas, and you know uh, w- this question was like what's left to be disrupted, and anytime you would come up with an idea, be it in pharmacology, pharmaceuticals, um, patient administration, anything, there was already a startup that was like focused on it. So that there's already startups in every field. It's just that not all of those startups are going to stay in that lane. They're going to pivot. They're going to think about more ideas. They might not be the right team to do it. Like things of that nature. Like I probably wouldn't be the right fit for a therapy scribe, but there's a lot of people who are building excellent scribes for the therapy world. Um, so when you I cannot give a fish, but I can give I can teach a man to fish, and like I cannot talk about what's exactly left to be disrupted because there's just so many specializations. But I can talk about what's left to be like what how you can find something. The easiest way to do it is go through company directories for accelerators, for example, YC and all of these, and like first feel of what people are building. That's not how we did it, but whenever I'm talking to people who are looking for ideas, I suggest at the very least, like in your industry, see what people are building. I think the dog patch is a good area in SF to like that's where a lot of the startups are. So first, figure out what people are building. Second, when you select a field, for example, let's say someone selects oncology, which is cancer research or cancer treatment, um, figure out what are the different steps to it. So there's patient care, there's unfortunately palliative care as well, which is like the last step of the whole ordeal. But in between that, there's like so many steps, right? Like there's care, there's drug discovery, there's administration, there's billing. It goes on and on and on and on. Like it never ends. There's scheduling, right? So when you're looking at these foods, like go as deep as you can, select one, and like try to prove yourself wrong. Like why wouldn't this work instead of why would this work? So let's say you find out you want to build voice cares for oncology. Okay, that is a really bad idea because now these patients who are battling with cancers are calling, and now they're talking to an AI voice agent. That's just not going to work, right? So try to prove yourself wrong. But be optimistic, but try to prove yourself wrong as much as you can. And if I have to point out like a couple places that I feel are underserved right now, I think pharmacy is one of them, where the big players are CVS and a few others who are really good at building pharmacological softwares. But startups that focus on small functions of it are really really rare. And if I have to suggest books, like happy to suggest as many books. Like there's this guy called Drug Monkey who wrote a book called Why Your Pharmacy Takes So Damn Long, and like just a great read to have read through. It's easy, it's quick. But yeah, that's one. And I guess don't like voice agents. I'm afraid of like suggesting people to go to voice agents because it's a saturated space. There are big players, everyone's doing it. Scribing, same with scribing, but see if there are specialties that you can get into, and probably that's a good place to start. I'm sorry, I don't really have a good second answer, but yeah.
Super. Thanks you. Thanks a lot, West. I think this was great. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.